everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. So excited to be back here to talk about Nashville Soccer Club. I can't wait to talk about it. It's going to be so much fun to talk about Nashville Soccer Club. But first, I'm actually happy to talk to Valer Shabila and Clay Trainum about their weekends and Clay's trip to across the pond, as they would say. But I also really don't want to talk about Nashville soccer, even though this is a Nashville soccer podcast. So, Valer, why don't you go with your weekend first, and then Clay can give us his rundown of across the pond.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet for a first time
Oh, real
ever.
quick, Valer, I
Yeah.
also think it's funny right when Clay gets back, Everton gets deducted another 2 points. Coincidence? I'm
Mm.
not sure. Anyways, Valer, please go ahead.
Collusion is what I would say between Clay and the Everton Football Club. I
All I
don't
will
know.
say is that Everton has been deducted 8 points for an aggregate charge less than the 4 point deduction that Nottingham Forest got. That's all I'm going to say on that.
I'm gonna go ahead and counter that with how about we check into the 115 charges for Man City, and then I will go into my weekend and I'll keep it short and sweet for the first time ever because on Saturday I had a full day where I went to the Premier League Fan Fest. It was pretty fun. Also, the day before I got to talk to Ellen Shearer, which was really cool because if you're a soccer fan like me and you watched the Premier League when you were a kid, you know Alan Shearer's very, very big name. He's the all-time leading goal scorer for the Premier League, and I got a chance to meet him and interview him real quick. So that was really cool. Other than that, that on Saturday I went to the Premier Fan Fest, which was really cool. Watch Arsenal beat Brighton 3-0. Great time. Had a good time. So Tim Howard, him and I kind of locked, bald heads instead of eyes, but no, we didn't really interact at all. But other than that, then I went to the Nashville Gooners event, which raised a good amount of money for kicking the 615. So shout out to the Nashville Gooners for all the work they did. It was an awesome event, by the way. Even aside from kicking the 615, it was at a brewery in town, and it was a good time. I think it was one of the, and they had special beer made for Nashville Gooners, which I only have about 12 of them in my fridge right now. So really good, cool event. And then after that, obviously NSC match. And then on Sunday, I went to the mall, y'all. It was weird. I haven't been to a mall in a very, very long time. It was as awful as it sounds. My girlfriend and I are never going back, but I did get to buy some clothing items. So there was that. I will be shopping online for the rest of my life. I think that's
Clay, do
my
you want to
weekend.
put
That's
some
it.
side money on if Valer actually ever makes it back to a mall in his life ever again? This is recorded, by the way. He just said he's never going to a mall again.
I'll do
If
one a
if
year.
Belair
One a
goes to
year.
a mall again, he has to forfeit all of his prop bet victories.
No, this I do not agree to that. I do not consent.
The
That's it. Clay, what do you got?
well, one, I just want to say that I think malls are cool. But I can understand if you went to the mall, I think you did, why you wouldn't want to go there again. I get that. But yeah, I was in Jolly Old and did about 4 days in London, 3 days in Edinburgh, and 2 days in Liverpool. Got to see Everton finally win for the first time since December 16th on a very fluky goal, but I don't care. I was there, and they actually brought me down to the pitch before the game, and I got a photo on the pitch with my wife, and got to talk to a couple of former Everton players that I've actually met now a few times over the years, which was pretty cool. So shout out to Everton and their fan engagement team. They always do right by me, and whenever I get over there, so that was really fun. As far as England, I love England. It was a good time. Got to show my wife around, and you know, I'm got to see an Everton win. That doesn't usually happen. So just to go on the points thing, it's all nonsense, and they should be absolutely. It should be a scandal that they're punishing Everton twice for two different periods in the same season, but they're unable to punish City for 115 charges that date back over a decade. Leave it at that. But yeah, England was great. Scotland was great. It's always fun to go over there and see how MLS is followed, which is kind of an interesting side point to this. Obviously, there are some days I'm walking around wearing Nashville gear because I have a lot of Nashville gear. we were walking around, I want to say Piccadilly Circus, somewhere around there, around lunch last Saturday, and I had a Nashville hat on, and some guy walked by me, and he was clearly English, but an Atlanta United fan, and just wanted to let me know that Atlanta was better than Nashville. That's what he told me. And I was just caught off guard because I didn't realize what was happening immediately, because that hasn't totally happened to me before. I've run into MLS fans in England before, but just some interaction on the street was not something that necessarily happened a whole lot. For the teams that I saw gear from, I saw Inter Miami jersey in Camden Market
Wow, what
in
you
London.
did?
Yeah, and then I saw a Seattle Sounders shirt outside the airport, and I saw an LA Galaxy hat, but I was the only one in Nashville gear. So I got asked where Nashville, South Carolina was at the Globe Theater wearing a Nashville SC sweatshirt. So
It happens so much. Like if I'm like I've been on random flights in the United States and I've been asked that. It's ridiculous.
yeah, but yeah, but it was a good time. Like I said, I got to see a lot of tourist spots, got to go to some of my favorite haunts that from previous trips to England. So I'm looking forward to going back. And the next time I'll be there, Everton will be in their new stadium, hopefully in the Premier League. And I can't wait.
Well, I'm extremely jealous of your time in London and England, Clay. It sounds like a great time. But one of the main reasons why I am jealous, though, is that you were asleep while Nashville SC was playing soccer at some point in time.
I was asleep while they were playing, but I was awake when they lost. I woke up in the middle of the night and I figured I'm going to check on the game because woken up, like I fell asleep when Nashville was up 1-0, and I saw that goal. And I woke up and it was 1-1, and I was like, all right, there's like 5 minutes left. I'll stay up for the end of this game. And literally, as I was like trying to catch up with things that had happened on Twitter, I got the alert that said Philadelphia goal. And I was just like, I should have stayed asleep.
Well, I think that's kind of what a lot of the fan base is kind of feeling right now. I mean, look, I think it's gonna be tough for us to cover this match. I think this is definitely at least from my opinion, one of the lowest just lowest vibes, just lowest hope I've seen from a National SC standpoint. Um, do you think this is the worst that it's ever been when it just comes to the vibe of this team and the outlook for the rest of the season?
I don't. I think that it's the worst that it's been since the team's been playing. But I think if we go back to the build up to the 2020 season, the way that people felt about the squad was possibly lower because people were worried about selling tickets. They were so worried that the squad wasn't going to be good enough. And I think that is probably at a lower point. I think this is low because we've seen the teams be successful. But I remember people were freaking out about only having like 5,000 season tickets sold at one point. So I do want to keep that's not really applicable to the situation that we're in now. But I do think that we've seen the Nashville SC fan base, especially in those days, really freaking out about the future of NSC. And I think that probably to me felt lower than it does now. But since the team's actually been playing, yes.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that on the pitch, sort of reaction has been the lowest, and I think that's partially because of how Nashville played the first 4 seasons in MLS. I mean, I think if you look at a team like Cincinnati, for example, started off with 3 wooden spoons. They in their fourth season, after their third wooden spoon, when they started their fourth season, they started that season just like Nashville just started. They would have been really happy about that. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that it's comparable. I'm just saying like Nashville in a way making the playoffs and even in 2020 not only making the playoffs but going pretty far distance in the playoff. I think set a standard for this team and for this club and for the fan base, and rightly so. I mean, if that's the standard, if that's what they are going for, if the club, if that's what the club is going for, then they got to keep going and delivering in that standard. And not only are they not delivering that standard, they're even going below that. So, yeah, I think it's the lowest, and that's purely because of how Nashville performed to start with.
Yeah, I think at points you're just looking for progression, right? You're looking for things to improve somewhat. Finally have that good striker into play. You know, of course, there's different competitions coming in. We're not seeing that progression like we thought we were going to, which I think is going to have a lot of questions being asked for sure.
Well, a big part of it is that one of the things that Nashville is good at, annoyingly good at, was seeing out results. And that's related to a lot of things, but like everyone would get annoyed that Nashville would happily see out a 1-1 draw on the road sometimes. And but they could do that. That was something that they didn't have an issue doing. Now and we saw this a lot last year, it's seeing out results and like holding on for wins and things like that that we're not seeing from this school. Like if the club was able to win every game in which they had a lead in, they'd be at or near the top of the table. I can't remember what the stat was originally, but like that they've been at times performing at a level that can get you points and can get you moving up the table. So to be able to get to that point and then ultimately lose it and find themselves where they are now just further adds to the frustration, because it's the one thing that they could hang their hat on was, hey, they might not hold on to every win, but they were at least going to get a result in most games, and now they aren't doing that.
Right. And we kind of asked about that in our Twitter poll as well, just kind of getting an understanding of how you're feeling when it comes to the squad. Are you worried, panicking, not worried a lot? Valer, what were kind of the results with that so far?
Yeah, so this is over 230 votes. So
I
it's a
feel like we
substantial
keep on
amount.
increasing the amount of votes that we are
Yeah.
getting every single week we do this.
Shout out to Ben Wright for retweeting it. I think there are a lot of votes coming in that way. But also I think the amount of votes showcases how people perceive Nashville SC at the moment and where Nashville SC stands with people at the moment. And I think, so let's get into the results. The question was, how worried are you about Nashville SC? First option was not worried, and that got just over 4% of the vote. So not really a contender here. Slightly worried got about 19%. Worried got about 57%. And then panicking, I am panicking in all caps, got about 19% as well. So I would say about 96% of, again, Twitter is Twitter and not real life. I'm very aware of that. It's a portion of the fan base, and within that portion is the portion who voted. So I'm very aware of that. However, I think this tells us that where listeners of this show who are diehard fans of Nashville SC stand on this. I think this is a very good representative measure of that, and scalable as well. So I would say 96% being at least slightly worried is not where Nashville SC wanted to be 7 games into the MLS season. I'll tell you that from a fact. And then you're looking at 57% plus who are actually worried, and then almost 20% being panicking. That's just unfortunate, honestly. Like the amount of moves that they made in the summer. Sorry, not the summer, the winter, I guess, the transfer window, and sort of the preparation they went through in the preseason, all for the fan base to be at this level, must really hurt for Nashville SC. I think from a club perspective, we were talking to Gary Smith after the match, and he looked, I mean, even after the Leagues Cup final, he wasn't this defeated, because I think there was a lot of positives that he took from the Leagues Cup, to where right now it's so hard to focus on or even talk about the positives, not even focus on them, because it's not just the fans. I think the club is feeling it. I think the players are feeling it. And it really sucks for players like Sam Surridge and Jacob Schaffelberg, who are having pretty much the season of their career so far, and they can't even celebrate any of that because of how bad Nashville is at the moment. So I know that we'll get into that in a minute, but I think this is a good representation of where the fan base is at the moment. And I think the fan base has every right to be this worried and even panicking about Nashville SC.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to definitely talk about that in the next segment coming up. We're going to bring back an old bit from 2020, which I'm super excited about. And then we'll also talk about the match itself. We'll do that right next here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back here on Pharmaceutical Soccer, of course, at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can also check us out on Patreon. Help supports the show. Definitely helps keeps the lights on. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Sure.
I do have one thing to say about the Patreon, though, real quick. If you have joined in the last, like, maybe 3 months or 4 months, Patreon included this thing called free membership, and where you just join in for free. I don't know why they included that. It doesn't come with anything. So you have to go in there and kind of scroll down to get to the paid membership. So I changed all of that. So if you joined in for free and you do want to give us $5 a month, please go back and do that. If you've already given us $5 a month, we are so thankful for you. We really appreciate all our Patreon members because even though it's just $5, and I know that doesn't mean a lot for y'all, but it means the world to us and it keeps us going. So thank you for that. And one more thing, we haven't asked people to do this all year, and I will ask you right now to do it. If you've been listening to this show a little bit here and there, if you've been listening since day one, or if this is your first ever episode, go on iTunes and give us a 5-star review. It's not called iTunes anymore, Apple Podcasts, whatever. Give us a 5-star review. If you listen on Spotify, give us a five-star review there. We will read that 5-star review on the show. I don't know if the Spotify one shows us the actual review, but definitely the Apple Podcast one. So go on there, give us that. We don't ask you to do that a whole lot, but here's me asking you to do that. Thanks.
And when Valaire asks, you listen.
I hope.
All
Well,
right.
I mean, hopefully you respond. If someone asks you something, you don't need to listen. You need to have an answer.
Okay.
So I'm just being annoying. Sorry.
Appreciate that. Just Clay. Clay isn't back on the show, everybody. It's good to have Clay back, of course. To talk about this Nashville loss, 2-1 Nashville loss at home to the Philadelphia Union. Nashville going up in the first half with a goal from Sam Surridge, and then Philadelphia in the second half gets 2 back. As we kind of talked about, we'll just kind of talk about the match first, just kind of some of the specifics about it. Before I kind of get into the bit that I was talking about in the first segment. So looking at the starting lineup for Nashville, definitely still riddled with some of these injuries, but it was really good to see Lucas McNaughton back in the lineup defensively. And then Valaire, as you predicted, Josh Bauer seemed like he was the best defensively in the other game, was getting rewarded with the start against Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, the defense has kind of been all over the place since the beginning of the season with so many different lineups. It seems like the Shaq Moore injury is maybe a little more serious than we initially thought. So we'll ask Gary about it this week for sure. Well, I guess we won't be talking to Gary this week, next week for sure, and see where he is. And hopefully this sort of break can help Nashville, and we'll talk about it in a second. But defensively, they line up pretty much as expected. But I think the other big surprise, or the two biggest surprises, were Elliot Panico continuing to be in goal and Brian Anunga taking that start over Sean Davis. Both Panico and Anunga, I think, have played well this season, and I think they both deserve a start. It's just not something we necessarily expected. So it's nothing out of the ordinary necessarily, but it is still kind of telling of maybe Gary trying out some new things that he's hoping they work out. And honestly, the way that first half played, that lineup, I think, worked out. I think the way Nashville set up was really, really effective.
Well, and I think the first half is a testament to what can happen when Nashville plays a team to their strengths. Philadelphia is a team that is really good on the counterattack. A team that doesn't want possession of the ball like Nashville, just like Nashville does. So everybody was wondering how this game was going to play out. And in the first half, Nashville attacked that by pressing very high, very well, and having, I believe they had 65% possession by the end of that half. They looked like the dominant team in the first half by a mile. It looked like Philadelphia didn't have an answer.
Yeah, I mean it was all Nashville. They were all over them, and Philly did have like a shot or two, I think, that were kind of a bit dangerous. But man, it was a complete sort of domination from Nashville SC. The thing is, Philly set up in the first half to have three at the back to match Nashville's three at the back, and I thought that was really strange. I was talking to people around me in the press box because I don't remember the last time Philly set up with three at the back. I honestly can't remember. And even Gary Smith after the match said he was surprised by that. So they matched up with Nashville pretty well defensively, I would say. But Nashville still found an opening and were able to kind of penetrate that back line, even with an extra man in it. With that said, it definitely threw Philly off their game in the first half, I think, because of that three at the back. Because again, they've been 3-4 years under Jim Curtin. The last 3-4 years, they've played in a very specific diamond in the middle, four at the back, and for some reason, not against Nashville, not in the first half. So going into the second half, they changed into that, and well, we saw what happened.
Yeah, and the second half was completely a different story. Tale as old as time this season, unfortunately, where Nashville then gave up a lot of possession, was playing on the back foot. I mean, it easily could have been more than 2 goals. It easily could have been 4, 5 at a lot of these moments. I mean, Philadelphia missed just a couple chances that just complete whiffs and, a couple, decent saves. But I just the dichotomy of the way that the team looked in the first half compared to the second, even if Philadelphia makes adjustments, you should be able to respond in some way, shape, or form. And Nashville just did not have any sort of answer.
Well, and that was I mean, that goes back to what I was talking about in the first segment, where Nashville has seemingly lost the inability to close out games, and proof of that is in like I said, I was awake. I just happened to be awake when the winner went in, which meant that I immediately went to a stat that I literally just talked about with Tony Husband a few weeks prior, which is that Nashville had only ever lost a game when leading at the half one other time in their MLS history. And that was a 2-1 loss to Kansas City in 2020. And there was one other time that happened in MLS or in USL, which was to Louisville City, both of them away. So, I mean, it just speaks to this was something that's been coming, honestly, with Nashville's second half performances this year, because they have come out flat several times. And so it seemed inevitable that if it was going to happen, if that run of decent halftime lead maintaining was going to end, it was going to happen pretty soon, because Nashville has looked like a team that has been vulnerable at the back end of games for most of the season.
And one thing that Gary Smith has said repeatedly, and some of the players have echoed this, obviously you have the on the pitch stuff, and there's all the technical and tactical stuff that they go into every week and they practice every week. But there's one thing that Nashville has lost, I think, this season. It's the confidence and belief. I think I think people just underestimate how just confident Nashville were going into every single game since they existed, really. And that's something they started losing. I mean, even the end of last season, as terrible as it was, there was no point where it felt like the players didn't believe in the team. I truly think that even at the very, very end, even losing to Orlando, all that, I think the players were very confident in themselves and thought there was a way back. I think when you look at the goals being scored on Nashville right now, you look at the body language, you look at how they're responding to goals being scored on them. It's honestly, it's very discouraging from a Nashville SC perspective, because I don't think a single player truly believes that Nashville's capable of coming back or defending very well at the moment.
Well, and this is where things spiral, right? Because if you're not confident, if the players aren't confident, the coach isn't confident, the fans aren't confident, then suddenly it's hard to give a player a vote of confidence. to kind of move forward and get out of a funk. And that's where you have all of the backline combinations, right? Like Jack Mayer goes through a bad stretch, but because things are bad, you can't really let him play out of it. Whereas in the past, maybe you let him play out of it after a few games and he gets back on track. But now we're shifting the back line. Now Gary's getting a little bit worried because the Walls feel like they're closing in a little bit. I mean, if he's talking about signing players in a press conference, we haven't really heard him call out Mike Jacobs like that in the past.
Unprompted, by the way. No one asked him about signing anybody.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Davis is on a nearly $1 million guaranteed compensation for a contract, and he's not starting. That is a direct, line. This is where you're spending money, but this guy isn't playing. Like that translates into the way that you look at roster builds, and especially in a league where you don't have unlimited finances. And so that's the thing that we want Nashville SC to avoid. We want them to be able to work out of a funk, but if the ground doesn't feel solid beneath one's feet, then it's hard to give those votes of confidence to get players to play out of it. Understandably, like it's a tough situation that Gary Smith has to manage out of right now. And I think people are right to be worried. I think there are reasons to maybe, we'll get to that in the next segment, but like, I think there are reasons to think that Nashville will get out of the funk, but it makes it so much harder of a job when you start to feel like the manager doesn't have the confidence and the players you already know don't have the confidence.
Yeah, and I think Ben Wright wrapped everything up in a tweet at full time of the match. Nashville SC head into their bye week with 7 points from 7 games, a -5 goal differential, a single win at home, the worst loss in club history, and 3 blown leads at home, 4 including CONCACAF Champions Cup. I mean, when you look at it from a totality, just a total aspect, it does seem a little bleak. But, ladies and gentlemen, the Pharma Soccer crew is here to let you know if you should be actually freaking out about these things or not. I went back and listened to this back in August of 2020. I'm going to set the picture for you here. Mason was our producer at the time. Nashville just got beat by Atlanta United 2-0. And things did seem bleak there. So we went to the panic room where I picked a few topics specifically, and you guys gave me if you were actually panicked about this or you were not panicked about it, that, hey, this is something that will get better over time. Don't worry about this at the current moment. Or, hey, there's something that you really do need to worry about here. Something is structurally wrong. I feel like this instance is a lot more different than 2020, to say the least. And I'm excited to do this again. So I have some topics that I'm going to go through with the both of you here, and you're both going to give me your answers, and I will provide mine as well. I'm going to start with let's just go overall defense itself. Obviously, the defensive woes have been a problem for Nashville SC this season, giving up a lot of leads. Is this something that you guys are panicked about, that you're going to be worried about for, a long time with this team? Or do you think this is just kind of a short-term woe and you're not in the panic room yet?
I'm out of the panic room for the defense, simply because of the quality that's in there. And we know we've seen that quality over the seasons. And I don't think you just lose that quality immediately. In terms of actual talent and actual players, Walker Zimmerman, Shaq Moore are USMNT players or national team players. Lucas McNaughton is a national team player or borderline that. Same with Dan Lovitz. Jack Mayer, was getting kind of close to that provisional list for the January camp just this year. I think when you look at that and add Josh Bauer, who's come in and, for the most part, equated himself really well. Also, I'll add Joe Willis, who we all agree, I think, is one of the better goalkeepers in MLS, and Elliot Panico. I think Nashville, on paper, when you look at the defense, has a really, really, really strong defense that has performed season after season. Now, yes, I know the 77 games have not been great. I'm very aware of that. Don't get me wrong. I'm aware that the same issues existed in CCC. I do think, however, that is more of a injuries slash confidence issue, like we were talking about, rather than the talent of the defense in itself, which is why I don't think I am in the panic room for this one, because I think those players can come back to that form and even better.
Yeah, I think it would be more shocking that the defense stays bad suddenly as opposed to being what it has been the last several years. I think that injuries are a huge, huge part of this. I don't think, and I think that we'd all agree on this. I don't think we really fully realized how important Walker Zimmerman was to this back line until we've now seen an extended amount of time without him in it. I think in the past, like the last few years, when he's missed a game, Jack Mayer's been pretty good in that role, and Nashville has been able to kind of hide how important he has been. And now that he's been out for a while, I think his necessity to Nashville's defensive prowess is kind of obvious. The other thing that I would add into the defensive side of it is, it's not just the injuries, it's the lack of consistent the team being consistently around and built out. So, and that doesn't just include the back line, that includes the midfield as well. I think the defensive midfield has been lacking this year, which leaves the defense further exposed and therefore it leaks more goals. And so I'm not in the panic room because it seems unlikely that a coach with a pretty good reputation defensively for his almost his whole career and a good reputation in Nashville defensively with a back line that would compare favorably to the best back lines in the league. It's unlikely that they suddenly got bad. I think they're in a bad patch and they'll probably work their way out of it, but it'll be frustrating while dealing with injuries and a kind of rotating squad, especially in defensive midfield.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure if it's the quality specifically, and we'll talk about this a little bit down the line. I am in the panic room about the defense. I don't think it was just like one or two games that we missed Walker over a couple seasons. We had Walker out for a decent amount of games, and heck, there was a couple games that we didn't have Walker in the lineup just based on the fact that the defensive players that were in that lineup were the best center backs that Nashville had at the current moment. And we wanted to save Walker, just whether it was, international duty, just for different timings. Like it's not necessarily a quality of talent, but there's just something amiss here that I cannot fathom. I mean, we are now getting to the point where what was it, early 21, where we were talking about just horrible set piece defense. But all the other defense was perfectly fine. We have both of those things now, where just our normal defensive structure doesn't seem to be there. Plus, we're defending set pieces just terribly. Again, like I was talking about, that Philly game, there could have been a lot more goals than that. So I'm a little bit freaking out about the defense.
But Philly game was the third game in a row they conceded from a set piece. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit freaking out about this. I'm not gonna lie. Definitely, I'm in the panic room about the defense. Okay. Next, we talked about this in August of 2020 as well, so I did want to bring this up here. I think it's been a very interesting run of matches for Hani Mukhtar as well, both here in Champions Cup. I understand, like, early season, Hani is a little bit different. Are you guys panicking about Hani in this team, or are you not?
I'm not. I'm I would be if his goalless streak was still going on, but again, this is not to belabor the point, but it seems unlikely that someone just suddenly doesn't become the player that they had been over an extended amount of time. It's one thing for a guy to score 20 goals one season and then not be that on either end of it. It's another thing for someone to be consistently among, the most statistically productive offensive players in league history over 3 years and then fall off. Like that doesn't really track. And obviously he did score the other day or the other week. And so that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. I think that the contract thing was kind of hanging over everyone's head. That's been mostly resolved. I think that he's going to feel I think we might see him score fewer goals, but that's not necessarily because he's suddenly fallen off. I think that's also because of the rise of other potential goal scoring threats in Schaffelberg and Sam Surridge. And so I'm not super worried about Hani right now. I'm super worried about, Nashville holding on to the ball and getting enough chances to really fully utilize Hani. But I'm not worried about Hani specifically.
Clay, speaking of people who had 3 good seasons and fell off, may I introduce to you Joseph Martinez? But I will go.
Well, it helps to have Miguel Almiron next to you.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
two
but
of
he did it
those.
without him for once, and then I mean, it hasn't been like a
Major knee
complete fall
injury
off.
notwithstanding.
Correct. Okay. I am 1 foot into the panic room with Hani Mukhtar. I'm not fully there, but I am 1 foot in. And I think simply because I don't think it's anything in terms of on the pitch stuff. Well, it is on the pitch in that my worry with Hani Mukhtar is more about the mentality of the team and himself rather than his talent. Let me be very clear about that. I don't think his talent is lacking. I don't think, yeah, he's one of the best players in MLS, and there's no argument there. I think this is very tough for Hani to accept at the moment. Nashville SC being bad. I think this is the first time we've seen Nashville SC be bad for a long stretch of the season. Yes, Hani Mukhtar was the MVP, clear MVP of Nashville SC, but that's Nashville SC that's stable. That is a stable Nashville SC where Hani Mukhtar's goals and assists meant so much because they often won Nashville the match. Now Hani Mukhtar, even if he scores, assists, whatever he does, his goals and assists are not meaning anything because Nashville are just conceding 2 goals a game or 3 goals a game and then losing that match or drawing it. So I do think there is a little bit of worry from my end that eventually this is just going to be too much for him to handle. He was wearing the armband. So clearly he's the leader of the team. He's the best player of the team. He's the most paid player of the team. Look, I mean, it's a lot of pressure and responsibility on this one player. And like I said, Hani Mukhtar is not the one defending set pieces. So I think there's just a little bit of worry that these things will catch up with him and he might feel a little hard done by with how Nashville is handling things. Now, that's part of being professional. That's part of being a soccer player. But I do have a little bit of worry about that, which is why I'm only 1 foot into the panic room, not fully in.
What if Hani Mukhtar stops scoring but starts taking good corners? Like, what a weird flip that would be.
I mean, currently we're not seeing Hani play well or him take good corners, but that's besides the point. Okay, so I am 1 foot into the panic room, if not all the way in the panic room for Hani Mukhtar. I have a wild take that I'm going to give right here, and it might be
Hey,
extreme.
Steven, have you ever not been fully in the panic room for every single time that you've tried
I
to
was
be
gonna say, do you just
Yes,
bring
I
up topics
have.
you're
I
fully in?
actually have. I what
Oh,
did
okay.
any of you go
Okay.
back and listen to the other episode in August 2020? No, I wasn't in the panic room about Gary Smith. I actually gave a full rant in August 2020 about how people need to stop
Wow.
being all up on Gary Smith. So I didn't even want to hear it.
This
Was
was
I
like two
shocked
months
back
after you
then?
wanted him fired, right?
I no, I'm not here yet. I have a wild take when it comes to Hani Mukhtar, and I want you all to bear with me, just for a second here. Um, I think Nashville has too many offensive weapons for Hani Mukhtar. This might be a wild take, but what the Hani Mukhtar that we are used to seeing is having control of the absolute entire game. If we needed a goal, the ball is in Hani Mukhtar's hands. Whenever we were passing the ball up, it went to Hani. Whenever we were carrying the ball up, it went to Hani in that way. Now that this team has progressed, now that we have signed some players, I am starting to wonder where Hani kind of fits into that role. For example, when Randall Leal and Hani Mukhtar, we had this conversation multiple times in MLS when Hani and Randall were both on the pitch, there was some complications there. We both had seen it. The way that Jacob Schaufelberg is progressing, like I seen a couple times where Hani was just looking for the ball specifically, not knowing where specifically he was. Can this be fixed? I think it's possible. Is this a wild take? Absolutely. No problem denying that. But I'm definitely a little bit more worried about how this team is built around Hani than I was earlier in the season with the signings that we did have.
Hani's best season in terms of like carrying Nashville SC was a season when CJ Sapong was a dynamite goal scorer for Nashville SC. And Randall Ayala played himself into the national team. So
Right,
I
but when it
don't
comes to talent specifically, like, are you telling me that CJ
I
Sapong is
think
just as good of a just as good of a player as
no,
Sam
no. What
Sturridge?
I'm saying
Absolutely
is
not.
that what I'm saying is that you say that they have too many people around him, but he was at his best. He didn't win MVP in 2021, but I think we'd agree he was at his best in 2021 when the people around him were scoring goals. So why would it be worse?
Because
I
he was also there. He was also producing in that same moment.
Steven, I think what you're saying maybe has some truth to it in terms of what Clay had said earlier, that some of these goals and assists are coming from other people now. I agree with that. However, in terms of on the pitch, Hani Mukhtar's role has never changed, and he still leads the entire attack because Jacob Schaffelberg has very specific instructions. Jacob Schaffelberg does not go in the midfield. Jacob Schaffelberg does not do any of that. Jacob Schaffelberg runs on the flank. That's what he does. Now, Sam Sturridge now goes to the right side or stays in the middle. That's all he does. Hani Mukhtar is the only player with Nashville SC with a free role in attack, and that's the way it's been since forever. And I don't think that has changed. I don't think that's the reason Hani's not performing. I do think, like Clay said, by the end of the season, his goals and assist numbers will be lower simply because other players are stepping up. And that's a good thing for Nashville SC, or should be a good thing. I don't think that him being unable to perform has anything to do with the quality of the players around him or the players around him. That's where I stand on that.
Fair enough. I understand that it was a completely wild take. When it comes to the free roll aspect, like it was a free roll for Hani because he had the entire pitch. Where Hani went,
He
Hani.
still does. He still does. There's not a single player who does what Hani does on the pitch right now for Nashville SC.
Well, in the
Not a
players
single
that
player.
and the players that are having breakout years have the space to break out because Hani demands the attention from it. Like that was the whole like they can't hone in on Surridge or on Schaffelberg. That's the reason why, like, we talked about games where CJ Sapong would affect the whole game without scoring because you had to respect him because he had scored 12 goals. You have to always respect Hani because he's one of the best players in the league, which necessarily leaves space for other people to perform. And it just seems weird that they would be worse if the players around him were better when the players around him would have more space because he's
Also,
there.
this is Jandre Cadiz erasure. By the way, he's having himself a great season in Portugal. He has like 12 goals in like 20 some games.
Off P.
Yeah,
Colt is having a fantastic season too. Do you know who scored for Portland last week? I mean, yesterday?
who? Eric
Eric
Miller?
Miller.
Yeah, I knew
Hey,
that.
I'm all on the bring Cadiz back train. Let's do it. Let's get
I,
weird.
Cadiz on a TAM deal would be would be great for Nashville, honestly. I mean, like Cadiz off the bench. Come on now. Come on now.
Can Cadiz play center back? That'd be great.
I mean, he'll defend better on maybe I shouldn't say that. He'll defend better on set pieces, probably.
All right. I want to be a little bit quicker about this one because I think the other one, and we'll take the other question into the second segment, the third segment, because we don't have a match to predict because we are in a break. Look, I think a lot of the question, I think there's going to be a good question about Gary Smith. And I think this is a time where just kind of and I want to focus specifically on managerial prowess here. I don't want to we'll focus on the overall team aspect of things later in the third segment. Gary Smith specifically, are you panicking about Gary Smith and the way he's operating this team right now? Or do you think that this is also just a fluke?
I'm in the panic room for this one. I think for Gary Smith, this is the first time we've seen this sort of response. One thing we talked about Nashville SC is that in adversity they seem to always respond, and when they're the underdogs, they perform well. And these are the things that Gary Smith has been able to instill into every single Nashville SC player from USL to today. I don't see that anymore. I don't see it anymore. I don't know, what the conversations are in the locker room. I don't know what the conversation are there. I will say this for Gary, I don't think it's lack of trying. I know there are a lot of fans who just have their opinions on Gary, and it is what it is. You want him fired, you want him in, you want him out, whatever you want to do with him. At the end of the day, I will say that Gary Smith has coached this Nashville SC team and other Nashville SC teams who have been subpar into results that they have no business achieving. And that is largely due to Gary Smith and his coaching. With that said, Gary Smith has to continue to do that to earn his job. That is how coaching works, unfortunately, in most sports and especially in soccer. And if he doesn't do that anymore, then Nashville SC has every right to get rid of him, and the fans have every right to be angry with him. So I think I understand both parts, and I'm not trying to play both parts. I'm just saying that I think this is the first time that I have been in a panic room about Gary Smith, because I feel like I always had the understanding that he's going to coach his way out of this, or he's going to be able to get the players to believe in his mission. And I just don't know if he still has that. I don't know how many times you can do that in a 7-year period. Now, obviously, not all the players have been there for 7 years. Only one has been there for 7 years, to be exact. But at one point, does everything become repetitive? And at one point, is it just too much for the players to not listen? I mean, they can hear him, but I don't know how much they're listening. So that's my biggest worry with Gary Smith, and that's why I'm in the panic room about it. Would it be the most Gary Smith thing and Nashville SC thing to go on a 10-game unbeaten run and, all of a sudden be in the playoffs? Probably, but I'll wait until that happens before I judge on anything.
I think this is one of those situations that is a reminder, as Blair said, that Twitter's not real life. What I've found is that the largest number of the anti-Gary Smith folks are the same people who were anti-Gary Smith folks like 3 or 4 years ago. Now, what I said at the end of last year was the first time where I think that they would have been justified. Like I wouldn't have personally gotten rid of Gary Smith at the end of last season, but I think that the argument existed and was a valid argument for moving on. I still think that's the case. I don't necessarily. I think at this point, what does it achieve? Right at this point of the season, what is the end game? You've got some reasonable things to base on why Nashville will get out of this. One, they've never been this bad defensively. It seems unlikely that they suddenly got bad. The injury side of things is pretty crazy right now in Nashville SC's front. So there's some things to explain. And so I would be hesitant for any sort of rash decision making, especially, considering that this is a league where so many teams make the playoffs. So like there's plenty of time to work out of this and work back into the type of squad that we've seen Nashville come from. But I think the argument exists to move on. And if they choose to do that, that's a valid decision. So I don't think I would put myself in the panic room. But what I would say, and this is one of the things that I really hope that people will understand, is that if they do move on, I don't want to see this sort of vitriol that we see directed at Gary Smith online when the day comes. I mean, I think that what he's done in Nashville is something that's worthy of praise and worthy of recognition, and he should be warmly received. If they move on or not, he should be warmly received in this city whenever he's around, because he's done an impeccable job over the course of 7 years. This year notwithstanding, he's done an impeccable job at giving us something that we always wanted, which was a competitive soccer team in Nashville at the highest level. And so I really, really hope that whether he gets fired or he gets out of this mess or whatever it is, that people still keep that part of it in mind, because he's still a human. He spent a good amount of time here and he gave us something we all wanted. He was a vital part of giving us something we all wanted. And I just want people to remember that.
Yeah, I think you put that extremely elegantly, Clay. Like I really do. Eloquent Clay, as you would say. I'm in the panic room, but I'm definitely like feeling a little bit more like Clay is when it comes to that. I think it's more just the natural progression of time, where sometimes the message just isn't the same. You might have the same message, but the players might need something different. And as we know, Gary does not like to change a decent amount in the way that he does things or the way that he coaches. So it's not anything against Gary specifically. I'm with you, Valera. I think Gary is trying. I think he's trying to find the answers. I think he's trying to get this team to it. But I think there is a potential that this just might be the natural break in time for Gary Smith at Nashville. I have one more question for you guys, but we do have to get to a break really quick. So we'll do that here in the third segment. And then we'll talk about some of the MLS scores in the Premier League weekend. So we'll do that next. And we're back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also check us out on our Patreon, like we said. $5 a month just helps support the show. We would really, really appreciate your support. We love doing this. We want to keep it going. So please, any help that you are able to provide, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. And of course, pharmasoccer.com you can also check out. So please do that as well. I have one more panic room question that's kind of just more of an overall question if you're in the panic room or not when it comes to this team. You look at the Eastern Conference this year, and it's very easy to show. I think it's been brought up multiple times about how good the Eastern Conference is this year when it comes to rosters, when it comes to team builds, when it comes to the competition itself. I mean, you look at a team like New York Red Bulls that is just absolutely doing extremely well this year. With the way they built their roster. Is Nashville a good team still? Are you in the panic room? Like, are you panicking if Nashville is actually good or not? Or is this something that you're not in the panic room about?
And you talk about the roster build.
I think I just think in general, like I think when it comes to I mean, if you look at the roster build that has FO kind of implications on top of it, if we built the right team on the pitch right now, is it just more of a lull, or is this kind of what we should expect with the players that are available?
No, I don't think that's what Nashville should expect with the players available. I think they should expect better, and I think they should be better. I think they have a better team than 7 points in 7 games. I think Nashville would say that. If you ask anybody within the club, they'll say the exact same thing. Mike Jacobs, I don't think he built this team so they can be in 12th place or whatever they are at the moment. So, no, I think the expectation is higher and should be higher. And I think in terms of the build in itself, I actually was pretty impressed with Nashville summer moves, with most of them, I would say. Again, I keep saying summer. Geez, the transfer window, as in January moves, I guess, and the summer moves beforehand last year, bringing in Sam Surridge, who I thought was an incredible get for Nashville SC. The spend is there. They've been building this team. There are holes, very clear holes that they didn't address, and that I think is what causing these issues here. I am not in the panic room about it because I think largely they've hit more than they've missed. Now, their misses have been pretty harsh, I would say. Their misses have been extraordinary. I think overall, though, when you look at this Nashville squad, injuries aside, I know that's a hard one right now. If you look at the squad in general, that's a squad that is really, really competing in MLS and should compete in MLS. I don't know if it's a cup winning squad, and if that's what you're looking for, there's probably like maybe 2 in the entire league who are cup winning squads. I'll maybe 3. But in terms of competing or sort of that second tier squad, I think in the league, I think Nashville is one of those and should be one of those in real life and on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I would co-sign most of that. I think that when healthy, this squad is as good a squad as Nashville's put together from top to bottom. The problem in MLS, is that when you get past that first run, there's typically a large drop off because of the way the league is and the way spending is in the league. It's pretty hard to build depth, especially if you're not in a glamour city. I mean, that's not really to take anything away from Nashville. I'm just, it is what it is. There's a reason LA Galaxy or LASC can sign depth pieces that aren't available to Nashville. It just, That's what it was. I mean, they're signing. How many times did we joke about Giroud coming to Nashville and he's going to LAFC? You know what I mean? Like that's just the way things are. That's the way Miami is getting away with it now. I will say that I don't think Nashville has used every roster mechanism that it can to produce a deeper squad. There are things that they haven't fully utilized to make the team better. Whether that is, of course, things are changing with the roster rules, but whether that is U22 spots, maxing out more on designated player, buying down guys that are designated players now who you can buy down to sign a different designated player. We haven't seen them utilize that in the ways that other teams have. We've seen them sit on DP spots for a good while. In fact, like Randall Leal was initially a designated player. They could have bought him down the whole time before they eventually did. So I think that generally speaking, that Nashville has built a good squad considering the constraints, but they haven't used every advantage that they could have to build a better squad. And I do think that that is the point that many will find frustrating or have found frustrating this season, where the depth has been exposed.
Yeah.
But I do think that if this team was fully healthy, and who knows if it'll ever be fully healthy, almost no MLS team is ever fully healthy. But if this team is fully healthy, this is a squad that can win you games and win you big, important, you know, club changing type of games. This is a team that can do that. We just have not seen it in any way whatsoever, whether that be health or team not playing well,
Yeah, I'm not fully in the panic room yet when it comes to this team just not being good. I do think we have shown that we can compete against a lot of these teams in multiple different fashions. But I do also believe that there has to be some answers and some questions to ask based on some of the moves that have been missed. We talked about in the beginning of the season, and one of the biggest pieces that we needed was some sort of depth at right back. If you're telling me now that Shaq Moore is going to be out for an allotted amount of time because the injury is a little bit more worse than we expected, what is the plan? Because the plan obviously cannot continue to be Alex Mawil at right back or right wing back because that's not working. So I'm not necessarily in the panic room yet. I do think there's a good squad under here for sure. I just think it is how we unlock it. And I'm hoping that I think this is a much needed break for Nashville. I think this will be a good kind of off, time for Nashville to kind of figure out some stuff before they get back into the mix against a very, very competitive Miami team, because they'll have Messi back too.
On the Shaq Moore and the right back thing, I fully believe that they should put Dan Levis at right back, because the one time he played there, he provided an assist and played an absolutely amazing match. This was like 3 years ago. But you know what? Dan Levis at right back. Make it happen, Gary. The other thing I was going to say is that the break that's coming up for Nashville, I think, is very important for them to possibly explore a trip to Dubai. The way that transformed the Arsenal, the Arsenal squad. I mean, now Arsenal has not lost a single game in 2024. They've drawn one and won every single other one. And that is all, apparently, if you believe some of these accounts, that is all due to the Dubai trip. So, hey, Ingram, call your connections, man. Send the team to Dubai, see if they can go on a little sunny retreat, and maybe they'll come back stronger. But that would be my suggestion.
Or join Jason Sudeikis in the London sewers and just remember to throw out all the dookie, as Ted Lasso would say. And that also made it really good.
No kidding. I do think this team can benefit from something like that. I mean,
I do too. I honestly do think that.
But I think something to get your mind off the soccer and maybe do something as a team. And I would highly expect Nashville SC to be doing something like that already. But yeah.
I think they're on a bus right now going to Evansville to watch the total solar eclipse.
There it is.
That would be cool too, I guess, for those who care.
Well, Nashville wasn't the only team that played over the weekend. First of all, Valer, just a little bit. I mean, obviously, from the Premier League live experience in Nashville over the weekend, that's really cool to see. Nashville set a record for the highest attendance of that, and they've done that in some major cities in the United States. So, a very cool perspective from that. I mean, this is really cool for Nashville from a soccer perspective.
Yeah, I think in terms of watching Premier League in the US, this is the coolest way to watch it. Unless you go to the games in the UK. I mean, there's just shout out to Clay. I mean, there's no other it was really awesome to be around other Arsenal or Premier League fans. We're all fans of the game, and we like to see the attention from Premier League back to the fans who spend their dollars and time watching this league. And I think it was really cool to see that effort. It's really cool to see all the guests that came through, whether it was Seamus or Sir Mofara, who's Olympic medalist. you know, um,
Is Seamus a guest at this point, or is he just always there? That's the question I have when
if
it comes
you
to
if you
Seamus.
say if you have the words Nashville and just like celebrities, I think Seamus just appears.
That's
You
fair.
just don't know where. Um, but that's a testament to him caring about soccer in the city, and I think that's really cool of him to do that.
He's also just getting ready for his move to AEW. Anyway,
I don't know what that means, but sure.
yeah, that was just wrestling content for a very few amount of you. Um,
All five of them are so happy right now.
Oh, I'm sure we'll get tweets and stuff like that saying it's more than
but
5 votes, it's more than whatever. So very nice job.
Or
but
dozens of us.
uh, I think you'll find you'd be surprised how many people are wrestling people that you had
I
no idea.
know, I know.
The thing that I will say is that it was very, very funny to me. So there was a good amount of Everton fans there uh, at the event. We had a few that flew in from all over the place, but there's a national Everton event that's in like 3 weeks. So we had less than we expected, but still a lot. And the thing that I found most interesting is that NBC ran out of space. There were a lot of people that weren't able to actually get in there because they were stuck waiting in line and there was no more room. And so they could have actually had even more. And so maybe they need to come back to Nashville and think a lot bigger. My favorite thing of the weekend is that we had a photo to go out of all the Everton fans up there holding signs with the Premier League logo on it saying, "You don't know what you're doing." And PL in the USA responded with great support. So I appreciated that. I hope it's still up, but it very much made me laugh that they took photos criticizing the
I,
Premier
I
League
think
that we
I
showed
think
great
they were
support.
kind of shocked with the amount of response. They had the most registrations and the most attendance of any
Yeah.
other city. But when you're looking at NBC and the Premier League, and they did this, like Steven said, in New York City, Philadelphia, like these are very much bigger cities than Nashville, y'all.
Well,
And they didn't get this sort of response. So I don't think they were prepared for something like this. And I think now they know.
yeah, well, and I think it goes into, Nashville's an event city. One of the reasons it's an event city is because it isn't as big as those cities. So, whereas PL in the USA being in New York is another big thing that's happening in New York.
Mhm.
When it happens in Nashville, it's the big thing happening in Nashville. And it also helps that it happens in the central time zone, which is one of the more helpful ones because it was in near when they went to LA a few years ago and there were games at 4:30 in the morning. I'm telling you, the showing was not very good. But shout out to everyone that was getting in line at like 12:30 and 1:30
Yeah.
a.m. Just absolutely insane. It was one of those things where I woke up in England and I started seeing pictures of people in line super early in the morning, and it's unbelievable.
It was also a wild weekend around the league itself, not including Nashville when it comes to results. Anything that stuck out to you guys when it came to results? Any teams? I watched a couple matches over the weekend. That Austin game was kind of ridiculous. Again, Portland going down 3-0 in the first half, and then Eric Miller getting the game tying goal in the second half was kind of hilarious to me. Um, Seattle a team I could look at and be like, well, Nashville is at least not as bad as Seattle's currently right now. Decided to go out there and win 5-0 to make me even sadder about Nashville. Any other results that kind of stuck out to you all?
I think El Tráfico continues to deliver. I think that's a match that MLS has been putting sort of as like the poster child of the league, and deservedly so. I think every time these two face each other, there's a lot of animosity and a lot of dislike between the two. And there are a lot of storylines always between the two. So it's really cool to see that kind of unfold. 2-1 LAFC was the final result, but yeah, a lot of storylines there. This is not an MLS podcast, so we're not going to go into every single thing that happened. But I just think it's cool that MLS is starting to have these rivalries pop up more often that are serious rivalries and that have substance to them. And no offense, but I don't think Nashville has that yet. But maybe one day they'll develop that. I think it's very easy to develop a rivalry when it's both in the same city or area. That doesn't exist for Nashville and probably won't ever exist.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, there is no bye week. There's no like international break this week. There's still MLS matches going on over the weekend. Nashville just has a bye this week. It's God, it seems like such a particular time for Nashville just to have a bye week where they don't have a match. So we won't give any predictions or anything like that because we do not play until next week, until when we are in Miami. So if you guys want to just give some plugs really quick, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I think you should check out Valer Shabilla on YouTube. I know I keep talking about it, but that's where I post On Air with Valer, which is a show where I interview Nashville SC players. I would really appreciate all the support there. Otherwise, follow me at Valer Shabilla on all social media platforms because that's where I post all the coverage I do for Nashville SC, and I do a lot of coverage of Nashville SC. So you should follow along.
Yeah, you can check me out at Clay La Soul on Twitter and Instagram. You should also check out Kicking It 615. I hear they do good work. And Nashville Soccer Archive. We are collecting items for the Vanderbilt Nashville Soccer Archive, which is still a work in progress. But if you have items or things from the past that you want to donate to the archive and make sure that it's enshrined in Nashville soccer history, please reach out to me at Clay La Soul. Thank you.
At PH Steven HD, of course, on all of my social media. Be here next week as I break down the Loudoun United FC match and Memphis 901 match, as I will be there in person for that on Saturday. I was going back through just as the old episodes as I was going through. Do you know that we did like the Loudoun joke like 1 or 2 episodes into the show? It was very early in.
I think it's because they didn't have enough players, and we said because they were playing Nashville SC and USL, and they didn't have enough players, and the whole joke was you're going to play for them because they don't have anybody else.
I was just thinking about that. I was going at, oh, it was really funny. Again, thank you all so much for listening to the show. Really, really appreciate it. We'll be back next week, even though we don't have a match, but we still have stuff to talk about with this team. I'm sure we'll have some injury updates throughout at some point, and I'm sure we'll find something fun to do. So please make sure you tune in next week. We really appreciate it, and we hope you all have a good rest of your day. And if the world ends because it's the eclipse, this is great to record with you guys. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Peace.
Adios.